Back in the late 1980s, the TV told us that Denver was the last dinosaur. But what if I were to tell you that not only is Denver not the last dinosaur, but he's not my friend, nor is he a whole lot more? What if I were to tell you that Denver was never even real, and that the last dinosaur was actually hidden from us this entire time, deep in the Congo River Basin? Would you believe me? Or would you tell me that I'm full of shit?
You're full of shit.
Well, why don't you come say that to some Bantu tribes elders? Talk about total ignorance. To many of the local Bantu tribes and other natives in the area, this creature is real and as serious as a heart attack. Join us tonight as we try to bring the elusive Mokele-Mbembe to justice.
Welcome back to episode 33 of Super Mystery Bros, the podcast that tackles the most dinosauric mysteries of our time. My name is Ivan, and with me again is Nate. Nate, I see you brought your khaki clothes and Kalashnikov with you.
Oh, you know me, man. If I'm not packing, I'm lacking.
Before we begin, man, I do have a question to ask you. What is it that our listeners can do to support our podcast?
Oh, wow, man. I'm so glad you asked me that. So if you're on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button and let us know your thoughts on the subject matter in the comments. And if you're on a podcast app such as Apple or Spotify, hit the 5-star button on our show and write something in the box if you're on Apple. And just tell everyone you know about our show and even people you don't know. Because without listeners, we're just talking to ourselves. So,
all right, man. Are you ready to get it started?
I'm ready, man.
Let's go!
We begin tonight with the subject of planet Earth. You're probably sitting on its land, floating in its water, or soaring through its atmosphere right now. Home to you and I and over 8 billion other people. To quote the late and great Carl Sagan, quote, "That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The sum of all our joy and suffering, all our creeds, all our wars, all our hopes and dreams, all births and deaths, a mote of dust in the solar system, a pale blue dot in the vast cosmic ocean." End quote. But billions of years ago, our pale blue dot was just a swirling ball of molten rock, a steaming shit pile hurtling through the cold void of space. Its atmosphere, thick with methane, choked any life that might have dared to form. Oceans churned with volcanic fury, a testament to the raw power that shaped our planet. But as Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, life always finds a way. To quote a poem by the late rapper Tupac Shakur, quote, "Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's law is wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny, it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete." End quote. And much like the rose that grew from concrete, life found a way and proved Mother Nature wrong. Against all odds, it sprouted up in Earth's cauldron of primordial soup over 3.7 billion years ago. At first, extremely primitive and what some might even call shitty, single-celled organisms began floating aimlessly in the vast oceans of Earth, a far cry from the life we know today. But by around 2.4 billion years ago, something peculiar began to happen. The first cyanobacteria came into existence, which sparked an ecological revolution on our planet. Using the sun's rays for food, photosynthesis, they began to pump our atmosphere full of oxygen, which paved the way for newer, more advanced forms of life later on. Soon, things took a new trajectory as the first multicellular organisms began to appear. And then by just 700 million years ago, the first animal appeared, which, according to Earth.com, was a jellyfish-like creature called a ctenophore, which all animals on Earth, from sea sponges to earthworms to you and I, can trace our ancestry back to. And then, just about 390 million years ago, some asshole fish decided it would be a good idea to crawl up out of the ocean on a dry land, and now we all have to go to work and pay bills and shit. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself here. Ivan, why don't you talk a little bit about the age of the dinosaurs?
According to the London Natural History Museum website, the first known dinosaur evolved around 230 million years ago. There wasn't a first dinosaur which is agreed upon as being the first, but a group of them, which includes small bipedal creatures like the, oh my god,
Eodremius, I guess?
Eodremius and
Eoraptor, I think.
Eoraptor, and larger animals such as Herrerasaurus. But what even is a dinosaur anyway? Dinosaurs or dinosaurs?
This sounds the same to me, man.
Okay.
What's the difference?
It's more like, is it more closer to Z or S?
Who gives a shit, man?
Dinosaur belonged to a group of animals known as Archosaurs.
I think that's Archosaurs. But anyway, there's going to be, folks, just bear with us. There's going to be a lot of words, scientific words, and also African words that we're not going to be able to know how to pronounce. So
We'll try our best.
just forgive us.
Yeah. Today, Archosaurs include birds, crocodiles, and some would argue turtles. But a dinosaur is defined by their hips and legs, according to Professor Paul Barrett. Quote, in particular, they make a much stronger connection between the hips and their backbone. And they do that by converting some of their vertebrae into a special modified structure called the sacrum that creates these additional connections to their hips. End quote. Reptiles have up to 2 vertebrae fused together into sacrum. But to be a dinosaur, an animal needs at least 3. Some modern birds even have up to 12 sacra. Which brings us to the historical context surrounding tonight's mystery. Sauropods.
Sauropods, I guess.
Sauropods, not Zorro. Sora.
So, not Zorro, no.
No, different thing. Okay.
Totally different.
Sauropods, which according to Britannica are any member of the dinosaur subgroup Sauropoda, marked by large size, a long neck and tail, a 4-legged stance, and a herbivorous diet. These reptiles were the largest of all dinosaurs and the largest land animal that ever lived. If you ever seen the Jurassic Park, think Brachiosaurus. Shit, man. Okay. The gentle giant, leaf-munching herbivore that sneezed and blew snot all over their kids in that one scene of the movie. I think I remember that one.
Yeah, you've seen Jurassic Park, haven't you?
Yeah, I've seen like maybe 3 of them.
Okay, well, yeah.
It's pretty good. According to scientificamerican.com, sauropods are an intriguing anomaly. No other terrestrial creatures in history have come close to them in size. Even the large land animals we know today, like elephants, were featherweights compared to the largest sauropods. The largest of which is Argentinosaurus, which weighed in about 75 metric tons. However, it's important to note that sauropods didn't only come supersized, they also had much smaller species. According to our favorite source, Wikipedia, the primitive... Oh my god.
Omdenosaurus,
man, you're killing me, man. Omdenosaurus, the world's smallest known sauropod, came in at only 4 meters long or 13 feet. According to the Earth.com, sauropods' social behavior is still a matter of debate among paleontologists. Some evidence, such as trackways and bone beds, suggests that they may have lived in herds or traveled in groups. Others argue that their size would have made group living difficult, and they may have been more solitary animals. So, the jury is still out on this one.
Wow, man. Although they walked the Earth for a staggering 175 million years, you know what they say about good times, don't you? Yeah, good times never last. And it's better to go out with a bang than a whimper. 66 million years ago, the unthinkable happened, and our planet was finally sucker punched by a giant asteroid, which caused a horrific domino effect. Day was instantly turned into night as the massive impact tossed an unfathomable amount of ash and soot into the atmosphere. Plants began to die off without enough sunlight, and as the herbivores ran out of plant matter to eat, they too began to die off. And the large predators who hunted them for food also began to starve. The Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, as it's known, marked an end to the age of the dinosaurs. Though they may be gone from this world for good, they live forever in our hearts, as nearly every 6-year-old boy is now a walking dinosaur encyclopedia. But are they really gone from this world forever, or did science get it wrong?
Tonight, dear listener, we take you on a harrowing journey through the deepest, darkest jungles of Congo River Basin, a place so mysterious and sinister that it was the setting for the 1899 novel Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, whose story most famously served as the direct inspiration for the critically acclaimed movie Apocalypse Now. So, pack your sunscreen, mosquito repellent, your RPGs, bazookas, machetes, chimichangas, machine guns, and malaria pills as we set off down the Congo River in search of not a renegade army colonel, but rather something much more elusive and dangerous. A long-lost water-dwelling dinosaur that is so massive that its name, Mokele-Mbembe, loosely translates to one who stops the flow of rivers. And it's reported to immediately kill anyone foolish enough to wander into its territory. Which begs the question, could you be next? Stay tuned to find out.
Holy shit, man. But before we begin tonight, let's step into the time machine as we go back, way back to Africa over 100 years ago.
Play the time machine sound effect here.
I won't forget, man. Go on. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a frenzy of European colonization swept across Africa, a period known as the Scramble for Africa. Amidst all the horrific violence and cruel exploitation, however, came remarkable scientific discoveries that ignited European imaginations. Africa, for them, was a dark continent, a realm of unexplored mystery. Welsh journalist and explorer Henry Morton Stanley coined this term, highlighting the continent's unfamiliarity to Europeans. The land teemed with creatures unlike anything they had ever encountered, fueling a sense of wonder. The okapi, a forest-dwelling cousin of the giraffe, discovered in 1901, was even likened to a mythical unicorn, and now serves as a mascot for cryptozoology itself. These quote-unquote discoveries were often already well known to the indigenous African populations, yet Europeans celebrated them as groundbreaking finds. From dazzling birds to magnificent megafauna, the continent yielded a constant stream of quote-unquote new species. Even our closest primate relatives, chimpanzees and gorillas, were documented in greater detail during this time. It led many to begin speculating about what remained to be found in the deepest, darkest corners of the continent.
According to contingentmag.org, quote, in the first decade of the 20th century, two German animal collectors, Karl Hagenbeck and Hans Schomburg, claimed to have heard talk of, quote, some kind of Zorian, No, it was the wrong quote, man. Quote again. Some kind of Zorian, known to both Africans and European hunters in southern and northern Rhodesia. To at least some Africans, this was the legendary Mokele-Mbembe, But Hagenbeck was sure it was a brontosaurus. To their European contemporaries, this did not seem unreasonable. They viewed this part of Africa as primitive region, inhabited by people whose civilization, if not evolution itself, had left behind. Part of the European civilizing mission, therefore, was to discover and identify their legendary creatures for them. This view seemed to receive further validation in 1938 when a South African fisherman caught a fish identified by local academics as a coelacanth.
A coelacanth. It's fine, man. If I didn't know how to pronounce that word, I would butcher it too. But basically, I'm gonna just put this into my own words here. Mm-hmm. A coelacanth was kind of like this ancient fish that they had seen in this fossil records for millions of years, right? And they thought it was extinct for millions and millions of years until this African fisherman, I think somewhere off the coast of Madagascar, caught one. And the European scientists were like, whoa, what the hell? But these fishermen in Africa had been catching them for forever. Like it's just normal to them. So basically, in the late 1800s into the 1900s, Westerners were kind of just dazzled by all the new stuff that they were finding, and they didn't know about any of it prior to the colonization of Africa. It was kind of like stepping onto an alien planet for them. And to most of them, they had no idea what they might run into next. Like, they even thought that they could run into some dinosaurs, which dinosaurs were still kind of like a fairly new discovery to science. I mean, within the last 100 years or so of this time, they'd found the first dinosaurs. So to them, it was a very real possibility that somewhere in Africa, there could still be maybe dinosaurs. Who knows? To them, it was the dark continent. So anyway, moving on with our story here. The first rumblings of the Mokele-Mbembe in Western literature come from the French author Abbé French name, Bonaventure Proyart. I'm sorry, I don't speak French. Who wrote in his 1776 book, History of Loango, Kokanga, and Other Kingdoms in Africa, that while serving as a French missionary to the Congo River region, he encountered giant strange footprints on the ground. Although the creature itself was long gone by this point, he wrote, quote, "It must have been monstrous. The marks of the claws were noted on the ground, and these formed a print about 3 feet in circumference," end quote. However, it wouldn't be until well over 150 years later that Mokele-Mbembe would be mentioned specifically.
According to the world's most trusted source of information, Wikipedia, quote, following is an excerpt from the Wikipedia, right? The first report of the Mokele-Mbembe comes from German captain Ludwig Freiherr von Stein zu Leuschnitz.
What? There's so many words in here that I don't know how to pronounce, man. I'm so sorry to do this.
No, those are German. I used to remember how to read it. It's okay.
Okay, so you mean this is all your fault?
A little bit. I mean, and this part. Yeah. So anyway, the first report of the Mokele-Mbembe comes from German captain Ludwig Freiherr von Stein zu Leuschnitz, or something along those lines, as described by Willy Ley in the book Lungfish and the Unicorn. Von Stein was ordered to conduct a survey of German colonies in what is now Cameroon in 1913. He heard stories of an enormous reptile called Mokele-Mbembe, alleged to live in the jungles, and included a description in his official report. According to Ley, von Stein worded his report with utmost caution, knowing it might be seen as unbelievable. Nonetheless, von Stein thought the tales were credible. Trusted native guides had related the tales to him, and the stories were related to him by independent sources, yet featured many of the same details. Though von Stein's report was never formally published, Ley quoted von Stein as writing,
quote, "The animal is said to be of a brownish-gray color with a smooth skin. Its size is approximately that of an elephant, at least that of a hippopotamus. It is said to have a long and very flexible neck and only one tooth, but a very long one. Some say it is a horn. A few spoke about a long, muscular tail like that of an alligator. Canoes coming near it are said to be doomed. The animal is said to attack the vessels at once and to kill the crews, but without eating their bodies. The creature is said to live in the caves that have been washed out by the river in the clay of its shores at sharp bends. It is said to climb the shores even at daytime in search of food. Its diet is said to be entirely vegetable. This feature disagrees with a possible explanation as a myth. The preferred plant was shown to me. It is a kind of liana with large white blossoms, with a milky sap and apple-like fruits. At the Sambo River, I was shown a path said to have been made by this animal in order to get at its food. The path was fresh, and there were plants of the described type nearby. But since there were too many tracks of elephants, hippos, and other large mammals, it was impossible to make out a particular spoor with any amount of certainty." End quote. However, according to Brian Dunning, in a 1929 German book by science author Wilhelm Buhlsche called Dragons, Legend and Science, Buhlsche wrote that von Stein clearly believed that the creature described was not an actual animal, but instead was nothing more than local folklore. According to German adventurer Lieutenant Paul Gratz's account from 1911, the crocodile is found only in very isolated specimens in Lake Bangweulu, except in the mouths of the large rivers at the north. In the swamp lives the insanga, which feared by the natives, a degenerate saurian which one might well confuse with a crocodile, were it not that its skin has no scales and its toes are armed with claws. I did not succeed in shooting insanga, but on the island of Mbawala, I came by some strips of its skin and a Wikipedia excerpt. I would just like to apologize for that. That was really rough.
And so a legend was born, at least in the eyes of curious Westerners. Real or not, the environment in which the creature is reported to live makes any meaningful research into the matter difficult, if not impossible to conduct, as the Congo rainforest is even less explored than Amazon is. So let's talk about some of the allegations surrounding this creature and why, if it exists, we haven't discovered it yet. According to the World Applied Science Journal, this area of Africa is extremely inhospitable. Part of its alleged territorial range, the Lakwala swamp, is considered as both the biggest and least explored swamp in the entire world, and the Congo itself sustains the world's second largest rainforest. It is an extremely hostile environment for any explorer to try their hand at wrangling anything, much less a living dinosaur. It's full of leeches, venomous insects, mosquito-borne diseases, deadly microbes, extreme humidity, and heavy downpours of rain, and with limited means of transportation or resupply. Civil wars and political instability in the region also add to the danger, as well as some pygmy tribes being notorious for, well, let's just say eating members of their own species. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's in this science journal. In the area near Laketele,
Lake Telly.
Oh, it's just lake, man.
Lake.
I was expecting something, interesting.
Lake Tele.
Lake Tele. The locals worship this animal as deity. It's said that the creature is nocturnal and semi-aquatic, although it's occasionally found during the daytime. In addition, the Congo rainforest itself is extremely dense and difficult to navigate.
Wow, man. All right, so let's start by talking about some first-hand accounts, because unfortunately, there's just not a lot of physical evidence of the thing to pick apart, except for some bad photographs and footage that a Japanese film crew took from a plane over Lake Tele. Do you want to describe this footage for our listeners, man?
Of course, man. I can help you with that. If you use the method of free associations, the first thing that comes to my mind, I can say that this video was shaky.
Yeah, it was pretty shaky.
Yeah. We can see old footage from the plane, which reminds me of old flight simulator games, kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality of the terrain and then they flew over I think they said it was like
Lake Tele.
Still lake.
Lake
Okay.
Tele. The same
Lake
one from
Tele.
the story here.
So yeah, they flew over the Lake Tele and they captured some sort of thing flowing in the lake, and I think they thought it was some sort of dinosaur, like, right?
Maybe. It was just way too far away.
It's way too far.
blurry.
It looks like a...
Yeah, so it looks a lot like some, if you ever see some footage of the Loch Ness Monster or something, you see some basic, like a speck in the middle of the water with like a bunch of ripples around it. That's basically all you can see. But you can't see any detail, but they're still claiming that this is a dinosaur.
There might be some resemblance to the shape, but...
Yeah, so you can't... It is kind of weird when you zoom in on this footage. It does look like there's a neck, but you can't really tell if that's just some artifacts from the footage.
It's really hard to say, yeah.
Because it's just basically a speck zoomed in. Anyway, I struggled to figure out how I was going to organize this episode. So let's just talk about some of the firsthand accounts by some of the people who have either seen the monster or have gone out looking for it. So I do want to read an excerpt from an article that was written by William J. Gibbons, who, as a disclaimer here, is a Scottish creationist and cryptozoologist, because even though I wouldn't normally rely on someone like this, he does go over a lot of like the recent historical sightings and expeditions pretty well. Better than I can, at least. So the following comes from a July 2002 edition of Impact, Vital Articles on Science and Creation, written by William J. Gibbons. Quote, very little was heard of Mokele-Mbembe until 1976, when herpetologist James Powell from Texas traveled to Gabon to study rainforest crocodiles. Powell picked up stories from the Fang people about an enormous river monster called Nyamala, and a local witch doctor called Michael Obang picked out a picture of the Diplodocus from a book on dinosaurs as being a dead ringer for the Nyamala, which he saw exit a jungle pool in 1946. Powell later conveyed this information to Dr. Roy P. Mackall, a biologist at the University of Chicago and vice president of the International Society of Cryptozoology. In 1979, Mackall and Powell traveled to the People's Republic of Congo to investigate Mokele-Mbembe activity, which Mackall believed would be centered in the Lingala region, a huge area of seasonally inundated swamps that was left blank on most maps. In the northern town of Imfondo, situated on the Ubangi River, Mackall and Powell met with the Reverend Eugene Thomas from Ohio, a missionary who had served in the Congo since 1955. Thomas has heard many stories about Mokele-Mbembe and sent out for first-hand eyewitnesses who had seen the monster. At first, Mackall was reluctant to believe that he was on the trail of a living dinosaur. Yet each witness was absolutely emphatic that the illustrations of the Apatosaurus and Diplodocus in Mackall's book on dinosaurs were dead ringers for the Mokele-Mbembe. So, real quick, just to pause here, the Apatosaurus is just another name for the Brontosaurus. It's that giant one in Jurassic Park where Sam Neill's character takes his sunglasses off. And then the Diplodocus is just like another sauropod that looks very similar to the Brontosaurus. But anyway, back to the article. According to Mackall, the witnesses described animals that were 15 to 30 feet long, mostly head, neck, and tail. The head was distinctly snake-like, a long, thin tail, and a body approximating the size of an elephant, or at least that of a hippopotamus. The legs are short, with the hind legs possessing 3 claws. The animals are a reddish-brown in color and have a rooster-like frill running from the top of the head down the back of the neck. All the eyewitnesses agreed that Mokele-Mbembes live in the rivers, streams, and swampy lakes, and that they are rare and dangerous. Time ran out for Mackall and Powell, and they headed back to the U.S., tantalized by the reports. Mackall returned to the Congo in 1981 with a larger team, and this time headed south on the Lingala au Herbes River. He attempted to reach the remote Lake Tele, a small, shallow body of water situated in the heart of the swamps where at least one Mokele-Mbembe was reportedly speared to death by the Bogombe pygmies in 1960. Unfortunately, the narrow water channels that led to the lake from the unexplored Bai River were jammed with fallen trees, making passage impossible with heavy dugout canoes. One flutter of excitement occurred when the expedition was rounding a river bend just south of the town of Epina. Epina? A large creature had abruptly submerged near the far bank, producing an 18-inch high wave that buffeted Mackall's canoe. Crocodiles do not leave such a wake, and hippos that do are not present in the area, for they have all been chased away by Mokele-Mbembes, according to the pygmies. Also in 1981, Herman Registers, an engineer from Pasadena, California, led his own expedition to the Congo and actually managed to reach Lake Tele. During their exploration of the lake, Registers and his wife, Kia, observed a long, graceful neck ending in a snake-like head emerge from the water about 30 feet from their inflatable raft. The creature regarded the astonished explorers for a few seconds with its cold reptilian stare before slipping silently under the water. Toward the end of their expedition, the Registers team heard the ear-splitting roar of a huge animal as it crashed through the swamp near their camp one night. My second expedition was launched in November 1992 and doubled as an emergency delivery of medical supplies to the mission station in Imfondo, where the missionaries maintained a free clinic. On this occasion, we headed north on the unexplored Bai River and pushed our way northwest through dense swamps where we found two small lakes that were not even on the maps. Once again, our guides were fearful of remaining in the area, and we had to cut short our exploration of the swamps. Although many of the inhabitants of the Lingala region know exactly where we can observe and film a specimen of Mokele-Mbembe, they believe that to speak openly of the animals to white outsiders means death. It was nothing more than fear and superstition that was stopping us from making a major discovery. So, I do want to point out the irony here and the seemingly lack of self-awareness in the statement here. Him being a creation scientist who is out specifically to disprove evolution and being frustrated that the local people's superstitions were what was stopping him from making a major discovery. So the irony is not lost on me. Back to the article, though. In 1994, a civil war broke out in the Congo, scotching any possibility of a third expedition there. At this point, I began to look for an alternative location in Central Africa in order to continue my search and decided to take another look at Cameroon. The south of the country, which borders the Congo, has scarcely been explored and is still rich in lush forests, swamps, and deep, broad rivers, just as Freyer von Stein had described it in 1913. In November 2000, I traveled to Cameroon with Dave Watzel from Concord, New Hampshire. We teamed up with Pierre Sima, a Cameroonian national who hunted regularly in the jungle with the Baka pygmies. The remainder of our time was spent slogging through waist-high swamp, going from one pygmy village to another. Our efforts were rewarded with first-hand eyewitness accounts of Mokele-Mbembe activity dating from 1986 to April 2000. Although the Baka people referred to the animals as Mokele-Mbembe, they described the animals exactly as the Kela pygmies in the Congo, and confirmed that the monsters still inhabited the rivers, swamps, and streams of southern Cameroon. The pygmies also described the monster as having a series of dermal spikes running down the length of its neck, back, and tail. This is a physical feature of sauropod dinosaurs that was unknown to paleontologists until 1991. Additional information was also gathered about strange animals that reputedly inhabit the forest and swamps, including a large quadruped armed with a heavy neck frill and up to 4 horns on its head. Our witnesses immediately picked up a picture of the Triceratops as being a dead ringer for this animal, which is reputed to kill and disembowel elephants. To our surprise, unlike the pygmies of the Congo, the Baka pygmies of Cameroon do not attach any supernatural or mythical beliefs to the mystery animals of southern Cameroon, and were happy to answer our questions and provided a great deal of information about them. As a test, we showed the pygmies pictures of other animals, such as the North American bear, which they did not recognize, thus establishing a measure of accuracy and truthfulness in their reporting. Enthralled by our progress, we returned home greatly motivated by the knowledge that we had made important progress in the search for Mokele-Mbembe. End of excerpts. Wow, okay, I'm sorry guys, that was a long article. But is there anything that you noticed in this article? Anything that you want to talk about specifically?
I think it's interesting that he actually went to different tribes, right? If I understood it correctly.
Yeah, so, if we're going to take his word for it and all of this happened the way that he said it happened, I do find it interesting that they were able to pick out certain dinosaurs as being the Mokele-Mbembe, like the Triceratops, picture of the Triceratops. And then he as a test, he shows them pictures of animals that they probably haven't seen before because they're not native, like the bear, like a North American bear, and they have no idea what the hell that is. So whatever this Mokele-Mbembe is, it looks close to what a dinosaur is supposed to look like. And another thing that I found kind of interesting is that the dermal spikes that he was talking about that run along the length of its back, neck, and tail he said it's a feature of sauropod dinosaurs, and this was unknown until about the year 1991. So even paleontologists didn't know about this detail, but these African tribes members who were seeing the Mokele-Mbembe described that exact detail on this creature. So I thought it was kind of interesting, man.
Arguably, the second most famous claimed encounter with the Mokele-Mbembe allegedly occurred in the 1983 when the Congolese government biologist Marcelin Agnagna and his research team went out collecting eyewitness accounts from the locals. The following account also comes from cryptidarchives.fandom.com. Let's go. It was reported to him that a young girl from Edzema had seen an enormous animal in the Bai River just 2 weeks before his arrival. Agnagna found that a sandbar which she claimed the animal had pushed her canoe up against was swept clean as if by a resting body of a bulky animal. Agnagna himself also reported a notorious Mokele-Mbembe sighting at Lake Tele during his expedition, which allegedly occurred when Agnagna was filming monkeys in the forest by the lake. On May 1st, 1983, the author decided to film the fauna in the low canopy forest surrounding the lake. This forest is a habitat for many mammalian and bird species. The author and two Boha villagers, Jean-Charles Dinkombo and Isaac Manzomoi, set out early in the morning. At approximately 2:30 p.m., the author was filming a troop of monkeys. One of the villagers, Dinkombo, fell into a pool of muddy water and went to the edge of the lake to wash himself. As he made his way to the shore of the lake, he was shocked and horrified by what he saw. Author's words? Kind of. About 5 minutes later, we heard his shouts to come quickly. We joined him by the lake and he pointed to what he was observing, which was at first obscured by heavy foliage. We were then able to observe a strange animal with a wide back, long neck, and a small head. The animal was located at about 300 meters from the edge of the lake, and we were able to advance about 60 meters in the shallow water, placing us at a distance of about 240 meters from the animal, which had become aware of our presence and was looking around us as if to determine the source of the noise. Dinkombo continued to shout with fear. The frontal part of the animal was brown, while the back part of his neck appeared black and shone in the sunlight. The animal partially submerged and remained visible for 20 minutes with only the neck and head above the water. It then submerged completely, at which point we trekked rapidly through the forest back to the base camp, located 2 kilometers away. We then went out to the lake in a small dugout with video equipment to spot where we had observed the animal. However, no further sighting of the animal took place. It can be said with certainty that the animal we saw was Mokele-Mbembe, that it was quite alive, and furthermore, that it is known to many inhabitants of the Lingala region. Its total length from head to back, visible above the waterline, was estimated at 5 meters. Though he had his camera ready, Agnagna failed to capture the alleged animal on film, a fact which has made his sighting highly controversial. This controversy stems in part from a translation error made when his report was first published in English. Agnagna field report translated from French was published in Cryptozoology in 1983. In this translation, the explanation given for Agnagna's failure to film the animal is that the lens cap was still on the camera, Minitola XL42, when he began filming, and by the time he noticed, he had run out of film. Very soon it was pointed out that the design of Minitoba XL42 would have made such a mistake impossible. This camera cannot be used without looking through the lens. However, the lens cap story had arisen from a translation error due to linguistic ambiguity and faulty information received from the third party. In an interview with J. Richard Greenwell, Agnagna explained that his camera had in fact been on the wrong setting. I tried to film the animal, but the film was almost finished because I had been filming monkeys. Also, there are different settings on the camera and I had it set on macro by mistake. So, when I looked through the viewfinder, I couldn't see anything, but I started filming anyway. By the time I realized my mistake and corrected it, the film was finished. Although he could not film the animal, Agnagna was allegedly able to use the lens to get the better look at its face, as he waded in the lake towards it. He also claimed to have taken several poor quality photographs of the head and neck using 35mm camera, photographs which he sent to a laboratory in Paris. In his interview with Greenwell, Agnagna added that the animal's eyes were oval-shaped and resembled those of crocodiles. It didn't have any ears, and that, when it turned in the water, only its head and neck moved. He was sure it was a reptile, not a mammal, and was emphatic that it was not a crocodile, a manatee, a snake, or a turtle. However, he would not commit himself to any theory regarding what it was. As of 2004, Agnagna was still certain that he had seen Mokele-Mbembe, and that it was a reptile.
All right, so yeah, that was another really long article, and I'm probably going to chop that up in post. But anyway, in a nutshell, this Agnagna guy, he's a government biologist. He goes out with a team into the Congo jungle looking for this thing because of some recent sightings, I guess. And of course, one of his team members sees the Mokele-Mbembe just chilling in the middle of a lake. And so they rush over there, and of course, he has the lens cap on or something. Oh, he had his setting on macro by mistake. I don't even know what that means. But anyway, I tried to film the extraordinary event shtick, but the lens cap was on, or I had the wrong setting on, or whatever. You know, it's a tale as old as time. Do you have anything to say, man?
But he wasn't alone in the expedition, right? Some other guys also saw.
Yeah, apparently everyone saw it. And this Agnagna guy, he tried to film it, but he had the wrong setting on his camera. And then by the time he realized that he had it on the wrong setting, the film was already out.
I mean, I would still give him some benefit of a doubt a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
It happened
to
the best of us, you know? Like wrong settings on the camera. Sometimes, it could happen.
Sometimes you just have shit luck, man.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go over the most famous and well-known account of the Mokele-Mbembe. So the following also comes from cryptidarchives.fandom.com. The best-known Mokele-Mbembe sighting is said to have occurred at Lake Tele in 1959 or so, when a Mokele-Mbembe was allegedly trapped by a pike barrier and speared to death by the Bangombe people. By the time Mackle and Powell heard the story, everyone who had been involved in the killing was dead, allegedly overwhelmingly due to food poisoning, with 1 or 2 dying of natural causes. This has led to the suggestion that the flesh of the Mokele-Mbembe is poisonous or contains dangerous microbes or parasites. But Mackle and Gibbons, noting the generally low life expectancy in the region, argues that no significance can be placed in the deaths. The first references to the killing were published by Powell and Mackle following their first expedition, during which several informants told about the killing. Eugene Thomas recalled that, shortly after he arrived at Imfondo in the late 1950s, he had heard of a gigantic animal having been killed at Lake Tele. Miobe Antoine, or Antoine Miombe, the chief of police at Imfondo, also claimed that a Mokele-Mbembe had been killed at Lake Tele, or one of its waterways, in 1959, and a fisherman from the lake named Matika Pascal recalled hearing about the killing of a very large animal by pygmies there when he was a child. According to Pascal's account, quote, the Mokele-Mbembe had been entering Lake Tele from the Moliba in which it lived via one of the waterways, which enter the lake on its western side. After the animal had entered the lake, the pygmies blocked off its waterway by constructing a barricade of large stakes across it. When the Mokele-Mbembe tried to return to its Moliba, it was trapped by the barricade and killed with spears. Some of the stakes used to construct the trap were large tree trunks and are still there. The pygmies cut up the animal and ate it. All who ate of it died. The animal killed was said to be one of 2. The other one, possibly a mate, is said to still be there, but has become wary and difficult to approach. However, it will occasionally stick its neck out of the water to a height of about 2 meters. When he was a child, about 25 years ago, he heard of the killing of a Mokele-Mbembe at Lake Tele. He did not see the killing of this animal by pygmies, but he knew it had happened sometime before he was born. When I requested Jean to ask whether it was a long time before he was born, Pascal replied that it was not. The pygmies had cut trees about 15 centimeters, or 6 inches, in diameter, trimmed the branches and sharpened each to a point. These stakes were driven into the bottom of the molibo, or waterway, through which the creatures were in the habit of entering the lake. These molibos, 7 in number, are rivers with lagoon-like openings into the lake. It was hoped the barrier of stakes would prevent the creatures from entering the lake and disturbing the fishing activities of the pygmies. When one of these animals was attempting to force its way through the barrier, the pygmies speared it to death. Part of the celebration of their triumph consisted of cutting up and eating this creature. Their triumph was a hollow one, for everyone who ate of the meat died within a short time. Because Pascal still goes to fish in the very molibo where the killing occurred, he could affirm that the stakes are still there to this day, and therefore the story is true. End quote. So, what do you think, man? This is allegedly the most famous story of a Mokele-Mbembe sighting. So, they had trapped it in this waterway by basically putting stakes in the waterway to trap it, and then they all speared it to death. And then when they ate it, they all died. What do you think, man? Plausible?
I mean, is it plausible that the dinosaur meat is poisonous? Could be. But if they actually did it or not.
I think it would depend on how they cook it. Maybe if they didn't cook it properly, you know.
It could have had some parasites in it, you know. And if it's like a big dinosaur, maybe it's really hard to cook it well, you know.
Yeah.
You gotta cook it for a long time. Gotta use one of those big barbecue grills and, you know.
Why don't you talk about its alleged behavior, man?
Usually reported from rivers, but sometimes from the forest. Mokele-Mbembe.
You forgot to cite your source, man, Mr. PhD.
According to the the following is the excerpt from the cryptidarchivesfandom.com. Usually reported from the rivers, but sometimes from the forest, the Mokele-Mbembe is amphibious, allegedly spending much of its time in the water, where it's said to flee for safety. It is capable of hiding underwater like hippopotamus. Its great bulk creates prominent wakes, and gives the impression that the river is flowing backwards when it rises from the water. Although only its head and neck are often seen when it's swimming, when it emerges from the water, it does so back first. It is sometimes claimed to inhabit caves in the river bank, which are either natural or dug out by the animal. Female Mokele-Mbembe allegedly rear their youngs in nests constructed in swamps. Some baka claim that it's capable of rearing up on its hind legs to feed, and that it sometimes digs out channels. It is generally said to be crepuscular or nocturnal, coming out of the water to feed at dusk. Sightings are most commonly reported during the mornings and the evening. Mokele-Mbembe is almost always described as entirely herbivorous, feeding on terrestrial plants and aquatic vegetation. Since 1913, it has been said to feed preferentially on apple-like fruits of Malombo liana, a species of Landolphia. Chemical analysis of Malombo fruit collected by Macal indicated that they could not be the Mokele-Mbembe's only food source, as the fruit is too low in fiber and protein to support a non-ruminant animal. However, informants from the confluence of the Likwala, Au Herbes, and the Sanga reported that Mokele-Mbembe used to rise out of the water and kill and possibly eat domestic goats. Despite its diet, it is notoriously fall-tempered, overturning canoes with its tail, and had a particular hatred of hippopotamuses. It will also allegedly kill elephants and crocodiles, although Bella describes the crocodile as Mokele-Mbembe's only formidable enemy. Macal was told that Mokele-Mbembe do not usually vocalize, but reports of vocalizations do exist. Besides the controversial recording made by Herman Regiters, some of Macal's informants claimed that the Mokele-Mbembe killed at Lake Tele produced a strange cry, and the Baka people told Gibbons that the Mokele-Mbembe had a frog-like vocal sac below its throat. A Bombay River fisherman also told Michael Bellat that Mokele-Mbembe makes a sound like go, go, go. It is usually reported alone or in male-female pairs, although at least 2 claimed sightings of the mother and single calf have been recorded. The Baka hunters who made these observations believed that a Mokele-Mbembe gave live birth once every 20 years. In the Republic of the Congo, it is usually seen during the dry season. In Cameroon, Bellat was often told that the Mokele-Mbembe appears when the rivers rise and leaves downstream when they fall. And Gibbons was also told by Baka that the Musons were the best time to see Mokele-Mbembe. The seasonal movements of the Kikuru of the northeastern Congo were similarly alleged to be tied to the rising and falling of the waters. Dave Wotzel believes that Mokele-Mbembe are born in the Lingala region and migrate to Jasangha region of southern Cameroon as adults, explaining certain discrepancies in descriptions from the 2 countries.
Wow, man. All right, guys, I am sorry to bore you with a ton of detail here, but let's go over some common theories and explanations. So one is that Mokele-Mbembe is one or several misidentified creatures that currently live or once lived in the area. According to Wikipedia, most mainstream experts believe that Mokele-Mbembe, as reported by Congolese natives, was probably inspired by the black rhinoceros, which once thrived in the region. Historian Edward Guimont has argued that the Mokele-Mbembe myth grows out of earlier pseudo-historical claims about Great Zimbabwe and in turn influenced the later reptilian conspiracy theory. Could Mark Zuckerberg be the legendary Mokele-Mbembe? Stay tuned to find out. Some believe it could be an oversized version of an elephant, hippo, or some other known creature of which you can take your pick from. While this may be a boring explanation for such a fascinating legend, Giga Hippo vs. Turbo Croc does sound like a great idea for a sci-fi original movie. No matter who wins, we lose.
Sightings of the Mokele-Mbembe could be nothing more than the simple folklore. Just a tale that someone made up to spread around over the decades, either for entertainment or just to scare people, and perhaps kids into not wandering off into the jungle alone, where a big scary monster will kill you. Similar to the boogeyman or Baba Yaga. Oh, nice. Finally, the coolest and the one we hear at Super Mystery Bros, hope is the case, is that Mokele-Mbembe is a relic species of sauropod dinosaur that somehow survived the mass extinction event of 66 million years ago and now thrives deep in the unexplored territories of the Congo River Basin.
Wow, man. Alright, so let's conclude our story here. The Mokele-Mbembe is one of the more lesser-known yet significant cryptid creatures alleged to exist just beyond the reach of mankind. If it's not real, it's likely just a harmless legend, a piece of human folklore that's just a universal part of the human experience. However, if real, would prove that dinosaurs still walk among us, even after 66 million years of mass extinction. The Mokele-Mbembe, a name which the mere muttering of sparks fear into the hearts of Congolese villagers, is a cryptid unlike any other. While most scientists dismiss it as being the product of mere folklore and legend, some believe it to be a relic dinosaur which somehow escaped the cold clutches of certain extinction. If it were ever proven to exist, the Mokele-Mbembe would shatter our understanding of the Earth and our place in it, lend credibility toward other legendary beasts, and make the Flintstones just ever so slightly more realistic. Alright, man, are you ready to try and solve this sumbitch once and for all?
Let's do it, man.
Alright, man, so I guess our listeners are dying to know, which King of the Hill episode does this all remind you of?
King of the Hill episode.
Which King of the Hill episode does this all remind you of? That's what you're famous for, is bringing up King of the Hill.
Man, do you have
one or no?
Do you have one?
I don't, but I was wondering if you did.
Maybe I'll remember some episode while we're discussing it, you know? Because
all right, let's move on. So, if Mokele-Mbembe is real, how would you go about trying to bring it to justice? You know, like what would your method be?
There needs like if you want,
Like, all right, so
if you wanted to prove whether it was real or not, I think we will.
no. Let's assume for a moment that it is real. How would you go about bringing it to justice? So, for example, let's say I'm the president of one of these Central African countries, right? And I say, Ivan, comrade, I have $5 million, right? I have $5 million budget. Do whatever you need to do with this $5 million to bring me the head of a Mokele-Mbembe on a silver platter. What's your game plan?
I mean, I'm not sure about like getting the killing the animal or something, but you know, I know what you mean. So I'll probably organize an expedition, even though I'm not I don't know this field much, but I'll probably organize the expedition with lots of people, some like helicopters to, you know, will search the.
By the way, the
lake area.
This area, I mean, the jungle is too thick to see through from the air. By the way, so
yeah.
It's like if this dinosaur thing still does exist and it lives in this area, I don't know how much a helicopter is really going to help you. You're going to be able to see
the lake
at least, right? Yeah. But as for seeing what's under all the trees and shit, good luck. You're going to have somebody.
Yeah, of course. We would have like a ground search plus some aerial search, maybe some like some infrared scanners or some shit like that. I don't know if it's maybe it could help to. Although, like I said, I don't know if we will be able to identify like the heat signature from the large animal in the jungle. I don't know. Probably no. I don't know.
Not through the trees.
Yeah.
So I ask you this just to say that you have to be right up on this thing. Let's say that this thing exists. You would have to be right up on this thing to know that it's there, because you can't see through all the thick foliage and the thick jungle. You can't fly a helicopter or a plane over it because you can't see in through the jungle. So this thing, even though it's this allegedly huge dinosaur thing, it could still be hiding here and nobody would know any better, honestly. So that's the argument that I'm making.
So you're saying if we are ever to find the Mokele-Mbembe, we'll need to like.
I mean, if there was something this huge still living on planet Earth, it would be hiding here, because it's I think it's thicker than the Amazon jungle, and it's definitely less explored too. So if there were a dinosaur still living on planet Earth, this seems like the place to start looking.
Yeah, but it's interesting that all the expeditions that were made before to find the Mokele-Mbembe, they were not successful, right? They didn't get the.
Well, of course, it's not successful because it's still a cryptid.
Yeah.
Because nobody has shot one and brought it in. So, what's your position on the whole thing? Where do you stand on this whole story? Do you view it as folklore? Do you view it as possibly a real animal? Do you view it as maybe locals misidentifying certain animals? Gun to your head, how would you know?
If it's again gun to my head situation, I would say it's probably either the pure folklore or it's a combination of, you know, like locals misidentifying some large animals, because, you know, there are some extremes. Some animals, they could like range in size, you know, so maybe they're misidentified some huge,
like rhinoceros
or
the
something.
Hippo or something.
And then it's created this like a snowball effect, and then they started talking about him, and then the rumors spread, and it's like you know, it I mean, if I had to choose one option, I'd probably say something like that. What about you?
Well, I'll tell you my opinion, but before we move on to my opinion, I do want to ask you, why can't this be a dinosaur to you? Why are you not giving that much credence? Why are you automatically just assuming that it's either folklore or it's misidentification of existing animals? Why are you Like why can't this be a dinosaur?
Yeah, like I said, although I'm not sure about the expeditions which were conducted before. I'm not sure about their quality or whatnot, but none of them were able to find any like physical evidence of its existence, right? So it makes me like kind of.
But like I said,
it's a
you would have to be right up on top of one of these things to even know it's there.
Oh yeah, of course, but it's the thing is that it's not a small animal like some mouse or something.
But
right?
it's not a small area either. So
yeah, it's a good point, but still.
Not only is this a huge area, but it's dense jungle, and you can't just like go out exploring into this jungle. You're certainly gonna die if you're not prepared to do it. I certainly wouldn't go looking for this thing, even if I didn't. If I would not even go anywhere near this place. It's just so dangerous. But yeah, that's where I stand on it. What about you?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's probably some.
But let's stay on track here. Why can't this be a dinosaur?
Why can't this be a dinosaur?
So we still have birds. We have crocodiles.
Mm-hmm.
Those two, they're not dinosaurs per se, but they're related to dinosaurs. But they lived at the same time as dinosaurs. But dinosaurs were the group that died off allegedly completely during the extinction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, it's just that if we haven't seen any other dinosaurs, because apart from the Congo,
but you've heard the expression, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that just makes the probability of its existence like
lower,
extremely low, I think.
Okay.
Considering.
Do you have any concrete reasons as to why this can't be a dinosaur?
I think it's concrete enough, man. It's like human beings haven't seen any.
No, and I'm not asking you these hard questions because I'm disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Right?
I understand.
So I actually agree with you. I don't think this is a real dinosaur. I think what probably happened was that Europeans, when they were discussing the matter of like local animals and stuff with these native African people, like over 100 years ago, I think that some stuff kind of got lost in translation, and maybe the African people were talking about like a rhinoceros. Other ones would be talking about a hippo. Other ones would be talking about whatever it was, like maybe a type of snake or whatever. But then the European settlers started to believe they were all talking about like the same thing. So they started combining all the traits together, and they started believing that this might be a dinosaur, because that would be a really exciting thing to them to believe that there was a dinosaur still in the Congo jungle after 66 million years. Or 6,000, depending on what your belief system is, anyway. But it is weird, though. That wouldn't explain the modern descriptions of it by the African people themselves. They still describe basically a sauropod dinosaur. Yeah, I don't know, man. It might be a mixture of a few different factors here.
Definitely. But when if we probably go back to our discussion on the famous Mongolian worm episode.
Yeah.
Remember that time I think I said that for locals it was the way to describe maybe like unknown dangerous force of desert or some stuff like that. So I think it could be the same case in this situation. And why would I lean that way? Like, remember the story that we just talked about, the story where some tribe they killed the Mokele-Mbembe allegedly, right?
Yeah,
allegedly they did.
Yeah.
And then what happened next is they ate it and they all died. So in my head it made me think about I guess I would assume for some tribes, like when some shit happens, like people die and they don't know why, right? They would probably like blame spirits or something like that. And if Mokele-Mbembe is something similar to the tribes of that Congo and what was the other country?
Cameroon.
Cameroon tribes, if it's some kind of similar animalistic representation of the dangerous forces of nature. Maybe for them, it kind of was logical to, say that they didn't know why they died, for example, that tribe.
Right.
And then they...
So one thing to note here is that, like, I can't remember the guy's name, the Gibbons, I believe his name was. He said that people in Cameroon didn't attribute the Mokele-Mbembe to any kind of supernatural force. They treated it like any other animal, right? But then people in the Congo, like tribes in the Congo, tended to treat it more as like a spiritual type of animal or like a deity. So to some, it could easily be explained by folklore, and then to the other people, they're like, yeah, it's just another animal to them. So I don't think that... But Lake Tele would be in Congo, so I would assume that they would be more on the spiritual side of like they're looking at it through more of a deity kind of lens. So yeah, that story just made me think about it. Like as if they ate the evil spirit or something, and then died, and then died, because maybe that the whole tribe died and everyone, because I guess there is, at least I would guess, again, some contact between the tribes probably. And then if one tribe just suddenly, died, everyone would be like what happened? Everyone would be like shocked and horrified, Yeah.
And then they try to find the explanation. And if this myth or belief about Mokele-Mbembe is like really prominent, they might have attributed it to the Mokele-Mbembe. It's sorry, I messed up that name.
That's okay.
A couple of times. What do you think about that hypothesis?
No, I think I agree with you. I think I definitely agree with you. I don't think that this is an actual dinosaur, and the reason I say this is because back in the age of the dinosaurs, the atmosphere was a lot more oxygen rich, which means that animals like dinosaurs could grow to be larger sizes. Like, for example, if a T-Rex or something, if you were just plop a T-Rex in the middle of the street in modern day, it would have a really hard time breathing and moving around. It'd be like at the top of Mount Everest or something, trying to breathe. So I don't think that like a full-blown brontosaurus could still even survive in like modern times.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It would have to be maybe a way smaller version of it, a much more evolved version of it, much smaller. But that mass extinction event, it killed the largest stuff first, because the largest stuff is what needs the most amount of food. So, it wiped out the largest animals first, and then the smallest animals were the ones that survived. So I don't think it's likely that anything huge, like a sauropod, would have survived that extinction event. I don't think there's any chance. So that's where I stand on it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely a good addition to our discussion. It makes the probability of it being real even lower. But
I still think it's a cool story, though.
It's an awesome story, definitely.
Yeah. I hope it is real. That'd be so cool if
that would be sick, man.
Someone brings one out,
Yeah,
but if there is anywhere on Earth that still has a dinosaur living somewhere, it would be here. I think it would be here. Like, if you were to tell me there's a dinosaur living somewhere on Earth, where do I think it is? I would pick this location.
You mean where we at, or?
I mean, the Congo River Basin.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So, all right, man. Is there anything else you want to say about this one?
All
right, can I ask you one more question before we go?
Of course.
If I were a government official, like going back to what I said earlier, and I told you, comrade, you have $5 million, right? Go find me a Mokele-Mbembe. That's your task for me. What weapon would you bring to take one down? What would you pack, man? What kind of weapons would you bring?
That's maybe I'll get like one of those flamethrowers from Elon Musk. You know?
Yeah, but would you really bring that heavy ass thing into the jungle when you have all that other stuff to carry?
I mean, for $5 million, you can
Hire
someone to carry.
I guess.
You know?
I think I'd bring like RPG, maybe some RPGs, 50 cal machine guns, something like that.
It's a bit mainstream, man. What about maybe some like nuclear stuff, you know?
Nah, I'm not trying to make another mass extinction event. Anyway, man, do you have any apologies, shout outs, or clarifications before we go?
Yeah, I'd like to apologize to Mokele-Mbembe. You kind of caught me off guard with that taking one down question, man. So I said I'll take a flamethrower or something. Actually, it's a herbivore, right?
Yeah, it's an herbivore, but they're alleged to just kill people when they wander into their territory. So,
allegedly.
Yeah. So it's not a nice herbivore.
If it's nice, I mean, yeah. Sorry for the flamethrower.
It's not Denver, the last dinosaur who can skateboard and play guitar and shit.
But let's give it the benefit of the doubt. I'll just like bring some treats probably and just take the.
What treats would a Mokele-Mbembe eat?
I don't know, maybe like soy milk or something. Like.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, just soy milk for a dinosaur.
Or.
Anyway, before we go, I'd like to just give a shout out to Denver, the last dinosaur, because even though you might not be real either, you're always going to be the last dinosaur to me. All right, man, I think it's time to get out of here. Like sands through the hourglass, so too are the minutes of our podcast. But don't fret, dear listener. We'll be back again to breathe new life into an old mystery next time.
Помните, ребята, истина прячется в тени. Вместе мы найдем ее.
This is Super Mystery Bros.
Welcome back to episode Double S.
What the fuck? I can't believe you guys know Cat Dog.
Yeah.
You used to watch that as you were when you were kids, or
Yeah.
You had Cat Dog? That's crazy.
Yeah,
I
we
did
had
too.
Cat Dog and. Last time we talked about Night of the Road.
Knights of the Road?
Night of the Road.
Night of the Road? What's that?
Road Night.
What's that?
About
Are you talking about Knight Rider?
Night Rider?
Knight Rider.
Night Rider.
Night
Rider?
I think so. About the smart car, right?
Yeah.
Night Rider.
Oh.
R.
Yeah, exactly like this.
R.